Thank you for joining me today. So I've got Overlap Rugby with me, and we will be discussing the quarterfinals. Hi guys, how are you guys doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, we're good.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining my channel. It's really quite amazing to have such a big channel on mine and just talking through the rugby story, especially bringing a little bit of international flavor. Everybody says I'm a little bit biased, but I promise you I'm not.
I'm sure we're back at you as well. I was wearing the Ireland top to us as well. We all have our own biases.
We all do.
Especially come quarterfinals now. The clubs are off.
Things get a little tighter, things are a little hairy. Unfortunately, you start to question your allegiances and that, and it's tough. It's definitely a lot harder to be to remove your biases. But I still try. Cool, guys. Let's get into it. I don't want to keep the show too long. So first things first, let's get through the news. So obviously, what are you guys feeling about Vinopoula's chances as a gotcha actually getting into the quarterfinals? How important is he for the team and all that?
Well, it's definitely hard to know how fit he is. It was something that we'd flagged pre-tournament. He came in at the very beginning of the season in World Cup and basically has been starting in number 8 week in, week out ever since then. Yeah. And 20 minutes into his first big game against Argentina, and he's gone. Actually, less than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the things that we noticed about him is with every one of those games, the amount that it's taking out of him, he's actually putting a little bit less into those games. He's never been more impressive this season than he was in the opening. After the opening few weeks against Ireland and Twickenham when they put 50 on them. If I were England, it's an area of massive concern for me. I mean, I don't know how injured he is. It's impossible to know. He rolled over his ankle, but at his best, he's obviously invaluable. But we actually have seen him be getting slightly worse.
Yeah, diminished returns, which is because actually they use him as such a fulcrum for their offense. Like the number 8 is the link man between forwards and backs, and once it gets outside him, their passing game is very crisp, but it relies a lot on him getting those hard yards and getting the hands free. So they don't actually have a like-for-like replacement for him because there is no real like-for-like Billy Vunipola replacement. So he is vital. Exactly.
I mean, that's what I've also been thinking the same thing. And I mean, he has, I know Eddie said that he has to play every game. He has to get match fitness, and he's a player who enjoys that. But it just doesn't seem to be working out for him. And I think that this is it's going to hurt the English if he cannot get to full fitness, or if he, for any reason, actually isn't able to play the full game. As you said, he's a pivotal attacking point for them, and especially when it comes to bringing that Ford and Farrell combination behind him actually to life. So I think that's going to be essential to actually be able to destabilize, especially considering the scale and the size of the Australian backs and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a clear weapon. Clear weapon,
definitely. But it's still good matchups all over. Like, to be honest, the rest of the 2 other back rowers will be fancy their chances against Pocock and Hooper as well, and likewise the other way. I think that's a really, really good game. It's one of those ones that has just all sorts of World Cup history as well, where they do tend to get one over on each other, which is why, historically speaking, I kind of expect England to do it just purely because of the nature in which the Aussies dumped them unceremoniously out of their own World Cup last time out. It would be in keeping with how history's gone for England to get one back on them this time. But you never know.
Well, I heard a joke of this week. It was quite funny. It's like, at least Japan made it out of their own World Cup, unlike England. So
well, that beautiful stat remains true, that England are the only host nation not to qualify from the pool stages. And we thought that with Japan that would be remedied, but no, they're out.
Exactly. The South African shame might have been cleared, but unfortunately, England still keeps theirs, which is hilarious. Sorry, English fans, it's just unfortunate how the tournament went last time. So I think that's potential. Next up, Aki getting a 3-week suspension. To me, this is a little unfair. A lot of other players effectively getting the same. The Dwayne Vermeulen tip tackle by Italians, same thing there. Yet 3 weeks. And considering these aren't just 3 weeks, any 3 weeks in World Rugby. These are the 3 weeks in World Rugby. How do you feel about this, considering the quality of the player and what he means to your attack?
I love Bundy. I do love Bundy, but I think, just speaking personally, as soon as I saw the tackle, I was thinking, that's it for his World Cup. Yeah. Just the way that they're officiating these things at the moment, it is a big 3 weeks, and that's probably why it's only 3 weeks. I mean, the Italian one, people were talking about it as a harsh punishment, but actually that spear tackle, any other time during any other tournament, you would see something more like 3 months or really long bans for something like that. That was really cynical. Yeah. So for Bundy's, you could say maybe we're mitigating it down, but almost all the time, a high shot like that, especially in this climate, that's going to get you Like it could have been more, but it's as big a punishment as you can give because his World Cup is over. I'm good for him because obviously there's no intent, but it's a greater good kind of argument where we have to get the tackle height down. We have to draw this red line about hitting guys in the head for the sake of concussions, and the health of the sport. So he's just a casualty to that, I guess.
Yeah, they made in real time. Nick Berry saw no mitigation because there wasn't really any dipping. In hindsight, the only arguments I can see being put forward is it was chaos ball. No one was actually in possession when they were both going for it. And the fact that he has great disciplinary record, as the Aussies have branded it, the great bloke rule, where it's like if you come to the hearing and you're actually a bit of a great bloke, you may get a bit time off your sentence. And he does have a pretty decent disciplinary record, certainly at international level. But yeah, I agree with Dara that like it was always going to be at least a number of weeks, and it's just the fact that it was the last game in the pool stages means they were probably just generous enough to give it just the 3, which is effectively his World Cup, which is a shame.
I agree with Unbiased Rugby. You're saying it's a little harsh. I thought it was just a yellow card. I know that we're talking about head tackles, and I was quite surprised you as Irishmen would feel that way. In my opinion, the problem that we have here is that does it become effectively like the jump, where it used to be contested by both sides and is effectively no longer contested in the air by the by the other team, because of the fact that in that chaos ball, should he have just let him go? I mean, you're talking about a ball where if he let him go, it could have been a try against Ireland. How is that going to affect the quarterfinals when you have a situation like that? You could lose a player or concede 7 points.
Yeah, it's definitely fair, and it's definitely a concern. I would disagree a little bit. I'm sort of okay with it in the sense that I think it matters for the sake of the game. I think what they ruled is that wasn't like, I know the chaos ball is probably the strongest point, and I think that's actually what Ireland tried to argue, is that he wasn't in possession of the ball long enough.
Yeah.
But they deemed that he was in possession of the ball, and he was, to be fair. And then when you're making a tackle, you just have to go low. You cannot hit the guy in the head,
and be even remotely upright.
And while like at the moment you're seeing a lot of red cards, we've actually had this kind of thing before. I mean, back in the day, you used to be able to punch people in the face in rugby, and nobody really cared. You used to be able to dump tackle people and spear them into the ground. And then those rules came in where you couldn't do that anymore. And all of a sudden, every time guys started punching each other, they were getting red cards. And it still happened for a bit. And games started to get full of red cards. Likewise with the spear tackle when they brought in that rule. And then it tapered off as players got used to it and players understood what they can and can't do.
Same with the high ball that you were addressing earlier on. Like that for that whole season when they brought in some of those things, there were massive red cards in massive games, but it did kind of taper out. And now people kind of understand their body enough there is a technique to go and contest for a high ball, a way that keeps it much more safe than it was where it was a free-for-all. So it is just a process of weaning it out. It's unfortunate that the World Cup lands right here where we haven't quite made the adjustment.
Really, where we are right now is in this terrible spot where it's just being implemented. They've actually been officiating like this apparently basically for 2 years, but they've only released the framework to the public this summer and only really started implementing it now at the beginning of the World Cup, which is a mistake on their part. Yeah. But long term for the game, it will taper off, and I think it is for the better good. I don't think you need to have those high shots to the head in the game, because the other side of it is the dangers of concussion and everything that comes with that.
And like you can argue, it's unfortunate for Ireland to lose Bundy, but however bad it was for us, like Samoa lost Sayuteni, who to our mind was their only option at 10 and a very exciting young prospect, and he was out of the game, and they became a bit rudderless, and a lot of their bad plays came through that 10 channel when PC was on in the second half, and so it was definitely affecting. So there has to be some punishment there.
Yeah,
for sure. No, I agree with you. I just wonder that the timing for me is the biggest thing. It's causing the whole world, because I mean, there's not only rugby fans watching right now. The world is watching, and to have this debate about yellow cards over the actual game frustrates me. It's like having a win when you have a World Cup, and where at least try the TMO thing when it comes to soccer, for example. Try it at least a year or two before, so everyone doesn't moan about that at the World Cup. Like, I'm just saying, I agree that they've been supposedly trying it, but I mean, we watch a lot of rugby. It has become serious now, and it's affecting the tournament a little. But I get it. I just feel bad for a player who effectively that's the 4 years to get there, and then to the most when it's serious to affect it.
Yeah, definitely with you on that. I feel good for Bundy. He's definitely a great bloke, as Shane says.
And he's not a dirty player in general either. And it is one of those harsher ones, but I think he probably knew himself as well. It was always flagged. This World Cup as well, like even in the run-up, we were noticing differences in the officiating in certain Super Rugby games, and certainly compared to European as well, there was a bit of a disconnect in some of these. So there was always going to be that confusion come World Cup time, and they're basically hardlining. After the first week, where they came in for a lot of criticism from World Rugby for not really officiating some of these instances. From then on, it's been a bit more forceful in what their interpretation is, and you can see even by the kind of conference between refs, touch judges, and TMOs, they're all kind of reading from the same page now in each of the different games, and it feels like a collective. So this is definitely the focus for it, and unfortunately, Bundy is the one to miss out for it.
Exactly. Well, other thing I was just next I put up there is just the Bwanga partnership, most likely for Ireland. Just since I had you guys on, I thought I'd bring this into. It's not really a news item, but I thought it'd be an interesting question. What is your feeling? Do you think that's the right combination to face Ireland? Do you feel that Ireland has an answer to it, or how, considering what they did to South Africa, how do you feel?
Yeah, it's for the second question. Do Ireland have an answer? It's hard to know. It is the combination I like most from the All Blacks point of view. Mostly just because I think Beauden Barrett is a phenomenal 15. Like, I think he's an excellent 10, but I think he's a phenomenal 15. I think the speed that he gives you, actually from a defensive point of view in terms of covering the backfield, is pretty class. And using him instead of a distributor, I mean, they have the two distributor aspects, but when you have him in the wide channels, not just as a distributor, but as a strike runner, not the guy putting people into space, but the guy who's being put into space, there aren't too many more dangerous players in World Rugby than Barrett. So he's almost more useful in that role than he is in a 10 jersey. I just think he's an awesome player. He might be the best 15 in the world.
Yeah. And also Ireland, like most Six Nations teams, defend relatively narrow, are certainly used to playing games that come at you more narrow. So putting Beauden in that outside channel where you're challenging the 13, the defensive line in the 13 jersey for Ireland, it feels like it's a good plan for the All Blacks. They'll want to be attacking that space and putting their form wingers into the space and getting Beauden's hands on the ball where he does have time to make decisions, because he's an excellent kicking option from the backfield as well. I think it's definitely danger, and it's definitely causing me some nerves in the run up to it, because I don't know the answer to your second point. Do we have an answer to it? I suppose hold the ball for as long as we can and try and make them make tackles instead, so we don't want them running at us.
Yeah,
exactly. But I mean, like, that's something that's quite interesting. And from a South African's point with that game, I think what impressed me most was the combination of the two players when it comes to Richie. He's really come into his own ability to tactically find space, tactically assess the team attacking him, especially from his Crusaders days now to the World Cup. He's just growing every game in the ability to find Beauden Barrett and find the space out wide, especially against these rush defenses that have been affecting the All Blacks quite a bit. And that's something that scares me quite a bit in that team, because originally I felt the partnership didn't work, but every game that they play so far, it's working more and more, and they're really starting to find holes in like split seconds, which no other team can, which is very impressive to see.
Absolutely. I
actually agree with Don. Hello, Don, Unbiased Rugby in the comment section, coming out with, as soon as they lost DMAC, that was a concern for them. So it really kind of forced their hand. And Mo'unga, like you're saying, has been excellent for the Crusaders. He's really benefited. I feel one of the players to benefit most from Ronan O'Gara's time at the Crusaders is Richie Mo'unga. Because he is a player kind of in that mold, and he does kick corners very well. He's very much a kind of a tactical reader of a game. But he also has a phenomenal carrying game. He's very good under the high ball,
and he's deceptively quick. I remember his try in Bledisloe too, where the Aussie spilled the ball. He caught it on the wing and he was gone. All Blacks are just full of players like that. That's the major concern for Ireland, is just how quick and sharp the All Blacks are looking in terms of, if you spill the ball, if you make a mistake, it's a try. It's not just punished, it's a try.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of games for the All Blacks to look through from this World Cup. I mean, look at this. Just unfortunately, South African games, the only real one where that can take a lot of influence. But effectively, South Africa lapsed for 5 minutes and 2 tries with their 2 tries down. That's the kind of game you're looking at as the Irish. Unfortunately, that's
it is. If you lapse for 5 minutes out of 80, it undoes the other 75 minutes of good work. That's the All Blacks. That's the level.
Yeah,
and it's scary.
It is a very scary prospect. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, we better just keep it away from them. Like, hold and make sure they're the ones trying to hit us and try and exercise control. But like you say, you need to be scoring as well while you're doing that, because that was one thing that I thought affected the Springboks in that first game of our first weekend, was just for all that period of dominance in that first 20 minutes where they really were so frighteningly dominant. They didn't actually rack up enough scoreboard pressure against a team that, like you say, can just grab a try instantly.
Yeah.
So for them, like, to be 6 or even 10 points or even 14 points down doesn't mean the same thing to the All Blacks as it does to, say, Ireland. Like, if Ireland are 14 points down against the All Blacks, I don't really see a chance for us to get back into the game. But whereas if we're 14 points ahead, you know that you can't switch off because the All Blacks will rein that in very, very quickly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
That is always the fear. And I mean, that's something that I've found that scared me about the Japanese game this weekend, was that it almost looked the same from them. I mean, somehow they've really gotten that same culture in their game. But we'll get to all of them going forward. Next up, I want to talk about Herschel Yankees and Colby. It seems like they're back into training for the Springboks. They're back in. They're good. So they're going to be pivotal for this game. The question I want to ask you is, do you feel that they should start with Herschel and then have Faf later, or do you feel the other way around? And obviously, what is your opinion of Colby's tournament so far? Both of those questions.
Well, I'll start with the second one, the easy one. Colby has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
And actually, the matchup between him and Kenki Fukuoka on that right wing channel for the Box is one of the most delightful World Cup matchups that you're going to see in the wide channels all year. It's insane.
Yeah.
I'm giddy looking forward to that. But Colby has genuinely been maybe one of, if not the players of the tournament. I mean, the guy is electric. He has been all year. I mean, we were watching him for Toulouse. We actually had Toulouse. We played Toulouse 3 times as Leinster fans this year, and I think in every one he was terrifying and scary. He's a freak of an athlete, and I'm actually buzzing to see him doing it on the world stage and proving that he is that world class player, one of the best out there.
Exactly, yeah. And then as far as Herschel Yankees, I don't know about Dara, I haven't talked about it, but I actually think they should start with Faf and have Herschel to come on later as real kind of freshness. But I really think the game plan from Japan or from South Africa's point of view will involve playing a lot off Faf, particularly in the early going, like bringing all those forward carriers off 9, using your centres then as even wider options, but still off 9 because Pollard can hang back. Pollard himself will fancy his chances of carrying against Tamora because he's a bit of a hardy book and plays a bit like a 12 himself. So he'll want to get stuck into that lad. But I think initially they'll want to use Faf and get that clip going where they're going round the corner with Etzebeth, Vermeulen. These guys can be kryptonite to that Japanese defense because they're just too big. If they get that flow going, they'll be just too big to stop.
Yeah, and crucially, I think Faf is probably an elite distributor in and amongst that forward channel, because as we saw when Ireland tried to attack them, the Japanese are pretty lethal defensively, and they have some really good jacklers in there as well. Jimeno in particular is an absolute weapon on the floor. He's a groundhog in the truest mold of it. So I think the recipe for getting by them isn't to do sort of simple hit up plays. It's to sort of mix it up and have maybe a few pods in narrow channels and a few different options for Faf to hit. And I think Faf is still the best distributing scrum half that South Africa have. And I think he's definitely the guy Razzie will go for.
Yeah.
Exactly. I agree with you. I think that he's definitely just a little bit more experienced, especially in the first 60. I think he definitely has the ability to calm the game down when need to be and speed the game up when help. So I know everybody moans about some of his kicks, but I think people blow it out of proportion heavily. I think he might have some array kicks, but overall kicking is a small part of the game. If you consider the way that he distributes the ball on attack, it's exceptionally they're definitely high quality and can put a lot of the players we need in, and it's going to be focused heavily around, in my opinion, it's going to be focused heavily around set pieces and the close, tight play, keeping the ball away from Japan, and then obviously when we have to, being able to at least defend on that side, because that's the other thing that Faf gives quite heavily is he's actually outstanding at defense.
Yes,
he is, yes, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think Reinach has a chance of getting into that 23 after his hat-trick, or is Reinach still third choice?
As a South African, I'm proud to say that we can have the fastest hat-trick in the World Cup history, and he might not even start in our quarterfinal.
Yeah, I know, might not even make the 23.
All Blacks were touting that about Ben Smith, but I mean, we might not even play him in the 23, let alone have him play on the start.
Yeah,
it's a phenomenal show of strength. Yeah.
That's quite sad. I'd love to see him play too, and I mean that's amazing. I don't know. I've got a feeling something's like me. If Herschel isn't showing like full pace, he will be making the 23, and I'd love to see him. One thing that's concerned me quite a bit in South Africa in the last, especially the last 3 games, not the All Blacks game so much, is when we stopped our scrumming out, a lot of our potential and a lot of our pace dropped. It's almost like even because when Herschel started, he also, like a house on fire, we killed for 60. Last 20 minutes were very slow. Other way around when Cobus Reinach started. So I wonder if it's just that they all have very different styles, and if the pack isn't able to adapt to it fast enough.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
Yeah, so I think sometimes when the Springboks get upset and their attacking rhythm goes off, that's kind of the disconnect you see, is that the nine's probably moving a little bit too quick for his own forward sometimes. That Faf was definitely more guilty of that in his first few seasons than more recently. I think his time in Sale has actually benefited him in that capacity. Like he's having to box kick and having to deal with very slow, laboured forward carries a lot of the time. So he's used to playing a kind of mud game as well. But he still has that clip that he can switch gear very quickly if he feels it's on and bring those carriers in very, very rapidly. And I think the other two, have slightly different styles, but it definitely don't bring, when they're all hitting their straps, I think Faf is definitely the strongest performer of them all on balance. And to be honest, like it's hard to judge by those pool games because a lot of times the Springboks are dominating big teams like the Wallabies, but when they're up against Namibia or whomever, like it's just such a mismatch that it's kind of easy for a nine to look very, very good when you're playing with that kind of dominance ahead of you.
Yeah,
exactly. It's tough. It's when, especially when your forward pack's moving forward like that. It's very tough to judge a nine, as it does become a lot easier. Even Unbiased Rugby's comment about Mwanga earlier, saying that the biggest question here is going to be, can Ireland push back the All Blacks forward pack? If they can, Mwanga might look a little bit more out of shape, but we'll get into that later. The conversation.
Sure,
Cool. So. Let's get into kind of like let's cover a little bit of the pool stages as they're now done. Kind of just talk about how you feel about them. What was your favorite game of the pool stages? I know it's putting you on the spot right here, but what is your favorite game? You can name more than one if you have to.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of contenders. I mean, I'm not going to say Japan Ireland, even though it is a contender. It hurts too much. Japan Scotland from the weekend just gone was great.
Yeah.
I think All Blacks South Africa was a great game. But I'm actually going to go for a little out there call, just because it was the game that sort of was so surprisingly satisfying and just took a wonderful shape to me, was actually Wales Fiji. I just thought that game was insane. I thought that it had all the physicality of a proper test match, and it was played at an incredible pace. Fiji brought such game. There were players falling down from both sides by the end of it. And yet the winning try was just this scintillating piece of awesome back play from Jonathan Davis. It really did have it all. It just caught me off guard. Maybe it wasn't technically the best game, but it might have been my favorite.
Yeah.
Wise, I mean, Semi Rodrada came into that game like a semi-truck. I mean, it was just
I love watching that.
I felt for Welsh fans watching that game, because every tackle you're like, I hope he can play his next game kind of situation. Or there was Dan Bigger. All of them really had a couple of massive hits on them. A beautiful game for sure. And I think it just was a masterclass in what Fijian rugby can be when it's top. And it reminds me a lot of the game against Australia. Unfortunately, they haven't had the greatest tournament, but there's been some shining moments of why you enjoy watching Fijian rugby.
Totally. Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to highlight the Wales-Australia game as probably my favorite game.
Another great game.
Because I know bringing up Wales again, it seems to be favoritism, but I think the Wales-Australia game, Ultimate Sharps, you were saying, Japan-Scotland were also really good. But I think that game was just amazing, because Australia just showcasing that they definitely are a different team in World Cups, as they were very, very strong in coming back in that. And also credit to the Welsh for showing the quality of the closing of the game. It was just a very, very nice tactical up there game, in my opinion. And is there any other ones you'd like to highlight?
Definitely, I'm thinking, you can't overlook France Argentina on the first weekend. They had a Super Saturday, curtain raiser for the Boks and the All Blacks. It was an absolutely quality game. You got to see kind of the best and worst of both sides in that one. But I think the one that I'm gonna say is my favorite on balance is Uruguay and Fiji. Fiji included in another one. An excellent. Every game Fiji were in was excellent. This one for very different reasons. But Uruguay just showed a great level of nous and kind of calm. It's certainly on defense. They kept their wit very well, allowed Fiji to make the mistakes that they were making, and took the game. And that was it made this World Cup now is the first time since the first World Cup that we've had a group stage where every single member of the group has had a win. And that's thanks to Uruguay and partly Fiji. But that's a very important game, I think, because I think in World Cups going forward, we want to see more groups like that. We want to see all members of the pool getting their wins off, being competitive.
Yes, absolutely.
No, for sure. That was definitely one of the nice things. I mean, no 100 plus figures here for this tournament really is good to see. And it was just definitely did bring it closer. And I think the biggest question, Mark, is just can we get the fitness up of the smaller nations to be able to compete? Because they definitely, a lot of the time, if you took the first half scores, everything looks damn close. And there was quite a lot of tight games. Even Namibia against New Zealand for a short while was a very interesting game that I enjoyed quite a bit.
Yeah.
So Yeah. Also, so next up was, I think, best player. What was your favorite player of the pool stage? Like, who just stood out for you? I know that's a tough one, but who's
it is like there's no way that I'm not going to forget someone going through this. It's so tough. There've been
we've mentioned a few of them already. You've mentioned Colby. You've mentioned Radradra.
Radradra's up there.
He's well up there.
Yeah.
I'm going to highlight Matsushima. He already showcased. He was outstanding against Matsushima against South Africa. When we played the opening game before the actual warm-up, he already scored a try there and just started his World Cup that way, effectively scoring tries left and right, which was very, very, very impressive. And he consistently is not only on the wing, he finds work everywhere on the field. It's been, even in the Scotland game, he was often an inside runner on a ruck, attacking everywhere he can, cleaning out. It was really impressive to see work rate.
Yeah, absolutely. I would give another shout out to Himeno in that Japanese team, just leading from front. I mean, being the standout player in that awesome pack isn't easy, and yet he has been making play after play, important play after important play. That steal against Ireland, and he actually got another one that was similar against Scotland. I mean, standing up in big moments, you got to respect that. And I would just also give a shout out to the hustle of Alan Wynne-Jones and Justin Tipperick in Wales, just the spoiling class breakdown play, the wily plays out of them that got Wales over the line in every one of their games. Those two have been fun to watch as well.
Yeah, definitely true. And then I suppose from the All Blacks as well, I'm just going to shout out TJ because I've enjoyed a lot of TJ to hear Nara's cameos, and his cameo at 10 is some of my favourite little scenes from the game so far. That worldie of a try, but also just the grin he had on his head. He was just delighted to be playing 10, which is probably not going to happen again for the tournament. But yeah, I enjoyed that.
Exactly. I mean, even Jordy Barrett gets himself quite up high the points table just because of some of the games there. And I don't think you're expecting that from that. So also good to see. No, there's been a couple of real highlight plays. Some funny moments from the World Cup. Obviously, just Dan Biggar's kick in the first week was just outstanding. Real credit.
Yeah.
And then Bowden Barrett also, some ghost decided to kick the ball out of his hand also in the Canada game. Really, really good for my Bruce. So both funny moments that we definitely have to highlight.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give a shout out to some of the showpiece drop goals we've seen as well. We've seen all kinds of different colourful drop goals. Pollard with an absolute pinger of a set piece off a kind of deceptive switch off Villy in the first weekend was great. And then we had a bit more of a clutch one in that day as well. We'd had
Camille Lopez got one for France.
It was a bit more like a impactful one. We had a great one from Scotland from the halfway line as well, a big long distance one.
2 from Wales in the Australian game.
Wales, like literally in the beginning of the game and then halfway, just after halftime, just like slotting it over, showing intent. That was also quite an interesting strategy. I think something they might employ again.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's good to see the drop goal back.
Well, it was interesting. I enjoyed Pollard's one in the first round because it was just like they didn't need to do it. It was it's a group game thing, but it's good to see them rehearsing a very polished set piece move for a drop goal like that, taking advantage of the fact that Pollard has a freak of a boot and can kick it from miles to actually pull that deceptive line. It's good to see the big teams coming to the World Cup with drop goals in mind and ready for the knockout stages because they do become more vital as these games roll on.
Exactly. And Bias Robbie also just mentioning Bowden's drop of the ball. Hilarious.
Yes, that was something else. Something else.
Well, that was just absolutely nuts. I'd never seen the like of it. And you're just so like maybe the humidity isn't that bad. It should be the same for every team. And then to see that, you're going, wow.
And I tell you what, that was the stadium in Oita Prefecture in Japan, which is a closed roof stadium that is a bit of a flat box, and it's hosting 2 of the quarterfinals this weekend. So you could get ready for more of those hijinks and bigger moments.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I even read an article saying that the All Blacks were saying that is insane. It's like cooking in a sauna if the weather's a 2 bath, and that can really affect the gameplay. It's going to be interesting to see how players can perform full 80 in that.
Yeah, indeed. I'm glad Ireland are playing in Tokyo.
Definitely. Yeah. I don't like the look of some of our boys in that humidity. Tyke Furlong is red-faced at the best of times. Just melting.
I definitely didn't look good, especially considering how important that scrum is for the Irish. So I thought next up I'd just highlight some of this is the World Rugby's Farewell 15. So I just thought it'd be interesting to just highlight some of the players here, why they made it here, what do you feel, and just, what is your opinion on this Farewell 15? It's sad to see these players go as they made this tournament amazing. And it's nice to see some, I'm quite surprised to see Uruguay actually making a team like this, just showcasing how much impact they had on this World Cup.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Arata and the captain that they had in there, Arata actually impressed the hell out of me. I think someone should sign him. He's a really, really tasty 9 who runs the game very, very well.
He plays in the MLR, so
I know.
See more of him in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, absolutely great to see the Uruguayans in there. I have a big affection for seeing Tata Chaparro in there because he's the one man who got things right for Argentina in terms of Argentina going into this World Cup had no scrum. And then all of a sudden they were getting on top of France and they were actually looking good in that area. It wasn't even an area where they really folded against the English. It was elsewhere that it went wrong for them. But he fixed that scrum and was getting some
similar for actually Guido Petty for them as well. Like there was a lot of talk of Lavanini, but Petty has never really put a foot wrong in that shirt. Like we're always flagging the risk that Lavanini being a hothead could cost them dear, but that was beside an absolutely robust guy in Petty who's surprisingly fast when he breaks a tackle and he's in the opening field. He's actually very, very dangerous as well. So yeah, good to see some Argentinian representation. Johnny Gray as well actually had a really good game in the wake of in that Japan game just gone. He had a lovely link for one of those Scotland tries. He always gets through a
try.
Absolutely. I'm delighted to see Jake Pelledri in there as well. I thought he was magnificent. He's an absolute monster of a ball carrier, and good. Italy have a class dynamic back row. It's a shame they didn't get to try their best to take on the All Blacks. But also big fan of Veanu at fullback from Tonga. He's a really, really great player, and he stood up. I mean, he was talismanic in those performances in the latter half of the Argentina game. Then against France, and even in that great win against the USA, he was instrumental in all. He's a very, very talented guy.
Yeah. Taufete too is one that I'll say. Like he's kind of there more, and like he showed more in the run up to the World Cup. He really didn't get a chance to get his game going because he's some try scoring machine when he's on form. But particularly from that England game, I think the US kind of suffered for being kind of a very well drilled, set piece oriented tier 2 team. With like a good offensive maul and decent scrum, and what happened in that England game was the first thing was their scrum got poleaxed, their tight head or their loose head went off, and then they tried to set an offensive maul and got it stuffed comprehensively, and it was just kind of set the tone for their group stages where it just didn't quite happen for them, unfortunately. Maybe 4 years too soon, but with a bit more MLR, you'd hope in 4 years' time the US will have a big part to play.
No, exactly. The USA, unfortunately, just couldn't showcase as much as we would have liked them to, considering their sevens prowess. It just showcases that it's taken Fiji years to bring anything close to that from their Fiji seven success into the 15-man rugby, and I hope that USA can do it faster. But it is going to be very because the USA have got an outstanding sevens team, and it just needs to transfer on. As the MLR is definitely something that few teams can have to actually build up their quality, and that definitely will be a talent coming into future rugby. So they just need to continue building it. As I think there's definitely reminiscences of a stunning team, but a couple of years to pull together.
Sure, very good. There's actually a comparison with them and Japan more than Fiji, because Japan, like the US, have a self-contained professional league, and we've seen the improvements they've made in 4 years. So who knows? With the US, by next time round, the MLR will be 6 years old, and that'll make a massive difference to them, I think.
Well, it definitely will. Awesome. So let's get into the quarters. Let's get into them before we take already half an hour in. So let's just get into that.
Fair enough.
So we have the first game up, England, Australia. So we've got Jerome Garcia as being the ref. What is your opinions here? I mean, I've given kind of like the history, the actual pool stages here, what the kind of results for each of the pools, like the points differences and that. Where do you think maybe some of the key matchups first? Let's talk about the key matchups for this game.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are a few. I mean, one of the big ones that I'm actually really looking forward to is actually the scrum. It remains to be seen how important the scrum will be. There's some chance that it won't be, but these are actually two of the most informed scrums in world rugby right now. Especially the Australians are freakish at the moment. They've turned it around completely. Scotty Seo is one of my favorite players. He's an absolutely destructive influence in the scrum. And at both tight heads, both in Alatoa and then Tupou when he comes on, they have a load of heft and they scrum with aggression, like they scrum to dominate. Yeah. But likewise, so do England. Whether they go, Mako has been one of the most improved loose-headed scrummagers in the world now over the last 12 months. He's become one of the best, if not the best. And Kyle Sinclair, like he's a mad case. He's a bit of a head case, but he scrummages with such aggression as well from tight head. Yeah. So himself and Seo going at it, I'd be amazed if the scrum stood still. Yeah. It could be a case where it just keeps collapsing. Yeah. But it could also be a case where one of them gets on top of the other. And if that happens, it could be key, because whoever loses that battle isn't going to be used to losing a lot of battles, and that can have an influence.
This is it.
So I think the scrum is actually one of my favorite matchups in this game, even though they're two classy attacking teams as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly. I think England have definitely massively improved their front row and their actual attacking, their whole front pack. But I think it's definitely built off of a dominant forward pack performance, that their actual backline is some of the best players you can find in that field. I mean, they've got that dual playmaker set up with a Farrell Ford situation going that I most likely they'll employ here. And it'll be interesting to see, because one of my biggest problems at the moment with Australia is they've had about 44 changes to their team in this World Cup already. I know obviously New Zealand and South Africa are doing similar amounts, but considering that they've had a lot harder games to go up, I think it's because I don't think they really know. I mean, who is at fly off? Who is their number one fly off, the choice fly off at the moment?
It's tough. It's tough, and really, they don't have an elite 10. They have a couple of guys in Leila Fano and Foley who are decent, and then they have a guy in Tamua who I really don't rate much at all. I think he's playing like a 12 when they do put him in there. He just trucks it up. It kills it. So really, they're just looking for as little damage as possible from their 10. I think most of the distribution is going to be done by the likes of Beale and O'Connor coming in.
Yeah,
but it does create that issue where they've just been like, they do stand very deep, but they've just been a little slow to get it out wide. And England are going to not resource the breakdown. They're going to go wide, and they're going to come up in a serious blitz. I mean, they've been all year. They have been so quick out of the line and just ferociously physical. Yeah. So I actually think one of the better ways to play that, if they're not contesting at the breakdown, is to weaken them and discipline them a bit around the fringes. So I actually think one of the key performers for Australia is going to be the scrum half, who I think has to be Genia. I think Nick White has been decent, but Genia is elite. A bit like Faf for South Africa. Got to mix it up, got to keep those English defenders honest. And I think actually the Wallaby locks have been super impressive. Rory Arnold and Isaac Rodda, and then with Adam Coleman to come off the bench, they've been super impressive. But every time in the 4-year cycle that they've come up against the best of the best, your Springbok locks of Etzebeth and Mostert, or your All Blacks of Retallick and Whitelock, they have been overpowered. Yeah. And coming at them is going to be just an incredible pack with in the lock partnership for England, George Cruz and Maro Itoje. So it's going to be vital for Australia's offensive game that they don't get blasted back, that they do get some plays off in those contacts, that Hooper gets a bit of go forward. And then if they can get that, it'll just become a world easier for them to get a distribution game going. Yeah. But actually, Genia is going to be their key distributor.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. I think Genia is going to be a massive factor in this, and he has already showcased that in this World Cup. And I do wonder, that number 10 position for me is probably by far the biggest question mark. But the next thing obviously coming up with England is, I know I'll bring it up another game now too, but England obviously having effectively 2 weeks break. How does that affect this game? What is this going to mean for the English, who haven't really had any, besides the Argentina game? Everybody was talking about this build up into their quarterfinals, where they're going to have a harder game, where now they have 2 almost easy games, then a relatively tough game, but not that tough, and then a break, and then we get into it. It's kind of broken their World Cup into 2 phases. Is that going to change the way that they're going to approach this game?
I don't know that it would change how they would approach this game, but I think it's increased their odds of winning the whole thing. Yeah, because they have, instead of having to go 5 straight weeks of tier 1 action, they have that little breast off period. So they're not, if they get through this game, they're going to be in a better position in a semi-final, but it's always hard to say.
It is, yeah. It's one of those ones that we'll know in hindsight. Like, if they lose the game, they'll say they were undercooked, didn't get a chance to play their full team the week before, and it's not fair. Otherwise, they'll get through, and that's because they were rested. Because, whoever loses this game, be it the Wallabies or the English, there will be bitching. Oh, there definitely will. So that will be talked about afterwards. And to be honest, I just don't know what the answer is. It would have been nice to see them get their proper hit out against France. I think they would have won that game comfortably, particularly because they were both through. You can just never back the French to turn up if there's nothing really riding on it. And they do often get swept aside by the English. So maybe they would have liked another hit out to get their combinations right. But yeah, I think now, like you were saying, the net result is that it does break it up nicely for them, so that if all goes well, they do have a better chance of planning a run and plotting a course to the final. But you never know. They may be caught a little slow by a very sharp Wallaby side. And one thing Cheika does tend to come into these knockout games with is really good tactical plays to try and expose you early. Yeah. So if England are caught a bit sluggish and get caught with their pants down a bit, then you might see that rearing its ugly head as an argument going like, well, we never had a chance, we didn't.
No, I think no matter what happens, we all know that at the end of the game, Michael Cheika and Eddie Jones are going to shake hands and say that was a fair game of rugby.
And wasn't the ref great?
Neither of them are known for complaining. You're right. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
By the way,
one thing that's quite interesting on Australia's side is I think that they've actually been quite good at finishing off games. I know that they couldn't get through the Welsh, but every game so far it's been about that second half for them. They've put most of their points off in this tournament in that second half. And with the fact that the English might be caught off guard, I think that they'll actually be, it will be a case of tougher for them to come back in the second half if they do. But I think that battle, that second half is going to be massive as both of these teams. English definitely look like they've got a massive fitness behind them, and the Australians seem to almost build their game throughout the game. Actually, as the game goes, get stronger and stronger in every game they play.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting point, and it actually juxtaposes how England have been in this cycle, because England have actually been a first-half team. If you think back to the tour of South Africa last year in that opening game where they raced off to a number of tries and then conceded a bunch, that's actually happened to them a few times in this cycle. Yeah. Just the Scotland game in the Six Nations this year, they went 31-0 up and ended up drawing the game. I mean, consistently they can get off to a flyer and then kind of switch off a little bit. Yeah. There's one thing that's true about this Australia team is that you can't switch off on them, because they do just keep attacking for 80 minutes, and they'll find tries. If you let them, they'll find tries.
Yeah, definitely true.
It's definitely going to excite me. The second half of this game, I think, is going to be quite a cracker. The weather for this game, for me, I feel is not much of an issue. Do you feel, because it's Joe Grease, I'm not going to bring it up in other ones, but it's Jerome Garcia. Do you feel there'll be any impact from him, or should we just bypass the ref question completely?
There will be.
I mean, yes.
Probably. there will be impact from.
He's the worst ref that's doing the quarters, I think. Well,
it's either him or Poit. I cannot understand how Poit is still getting big games, but Garces is giving him a run for his money these days. The main problem is communication when it comes to French refs. It's just, and Garces in particular has a bad habit. I think Poit's actually improved in this area, is where you can see an infringement about to happen. What Nigel Owens or someone will do is say, hands off, stop that, be clear, give instruction and give a chance to correct behaviors. Whereas Garces will be a mute for a lot of the game and then just blow his whistle sporadically. And both sets of players and both sets of fans will collectively look at him going, what is that for? And he'll then signal. There's very much a lack of clarity, which can create chaos. And then both of these teams, in fact, when they feel like they're getting the rough end of the stick, they can let it really upset them and get to them. So there's definitely scope for Garces having an impact on this game. Whether that'll be for either side, I don't know. But definitely, if a collection of penalties start to go and then the captain starts to get winged, it doesn't feel they're understanding what he wants, then that could be a problem. Yeah, but I'm hopeful that it won't be. That it'll be decided elsewhere, and that there'll be fewer avenues for this chat. Because one thing that annoys me, it annoyed me when Wales beat Australia as well, is all that chat that the ref was being punitive to the Wallabies. There was one decision that stood out to me as just a blatant wrong one, but that didn't force them to concede the try they then conceded. That's on you. Yeah. So it's the ref isn't the be all and end all. You can still control the controllables. And Jerome Garces, unfortunately, isn't one of them, but he is what they got.
Yeah. And actually, Ben Skeen is the TMO as well. So, yikes.
Yeah, Ben Skeen, he has annoyed the hell out of me, because he never speaks in clear English, and he kind of hijacks the decision. And I'm sure that'll be the same here. When you watch Wayne Barnes refer, you go to the TMO, he'll be like, right, what I'm seeing is this. Anyone disagree? No? Okay. Moving swiftly on. Whereas if this is going to the TMO, I'd expect long conferences with Ben Skeen talking in a very unclear version of English, where he's stating a load of technical legal terms, but not actually really saying his decision till the end. Yeah. And Garces struggling to understand anyway. That's my fear, is that we end up spending 10 minutes total at the TMO conference.
It's a dangerous matchup. It's definitely a dangerous
matchup. It's going to be a tough one. I mean, I definitely don't want to see that part of the game. Awesome. Let's get into the next game. So we've got the big one for you guys. The All Blacks facing Irish. How do you feel? Well, first things first. Do you feel the Irish forward pack can take on the All Black one? I think this is a big battle for the Irish. That's something that is a massive foundation for your attack. Massive foundation for something that I'm quite impressed in the Japan game. Sorry to bring it up. Is how they were able to neutralize that forward pack. How is this going? Do you think that's the thing of the past now? Was it just the weather of the day that affected the Irish?
It wasn't just the weather, no, but that did affect the Irish. But no, the Japan came with a really masterful plan, and it seemed they were planning for 2 years out a way to do a job on us, even right down to the detailing at the scrum, where they were talking Cian Healy this before the game, and then targeting Tadhg Furlong on his side. Very clever stuff. They nullified our carriers. One big caveat was that we did choose to rest Johnny Sexton, or he had a bit of a niggle. And what Ireland at their best do play a lot off 9, but they actually have Sexton running and dictating that offense and having multiple runners off him and options off him to try and pull defenses a little wider and test them there. And I know that the All Blacks have struggled with that in times gone by when we get that all right. So being able to bring forward runners in not just off 9 but off 10 is very important and pivotal to the Irish, because otherwise we do become one-dimensional and easy enough to stop.
In terms of the pack, you have to think that they can stand up to them. But it is like, I'm looking through the pack. I'm not sure that this pack is better than either of the ones that have beaten the All Blacks this cycle. But I would definitely like to see just a little more, for lack of a better term, just aggression from the pack. Like, I would just like to see a little more viciousness. They are big men. They are very skilled men. They're very experienced men, especially in that tight 5. And they have some very talented players. But they're playing almost a game of chess where they need to get involved in a boxing match a little bit. Like, they need. You need that aggressive carry game, even down to the way they scrummage. They scrummage for parity for the most part, even though they have very, very talented scrummagers. I do believe in our props. I think that they can scrum at elite. I think they can cause the best scrums in the world problems if they just go for aggressive scrums. But it seems like for the last little while, basically for the whole of calendar year 2019, they've been just holding a little bit back and just playing through systems. Against the All Blacks, how they beat them, they just have to play with this raw aggression. They have to just have that little bit extra speed, that little bit footwork on every carry, just make the effort to be as dynamic and ferocious as possible. And that's the kind of picture that can shock the All Blacks. Just playing as they have been, no chance for me. I think the All Blacks will get on top, but All Blacks have been unreal, and the All Blacks definitely have it in terms of the backline. If they can get 50-50 possession, it's good night.
Yeah, definitely. For Ireland to have success, it needs to be closer to 60-40, maybe even more. Like they need to be that dynamic. It's not the most expansive, but it's going through phase after phase. And the key to making that successful is that ferocity. You need to be up to the emotional pitch of where this game's going to be at. And to be honest, I don't see that as an issue this time. I think Ireland will be there for the fight. There's not a sense of like going into this underestimating them, or no sense that we're favourites in any capacity. We're definitely not. And the weight of history is entirely against us, both between the head-to-head between us and the All Blacks, but also the quarter-final record that still looms over every Ireland squad that goes to the World Cup like a bad dream of sorts. Like, it is just an absolute thing that they are carrying. But they're going into this all guns blazing, nothing held back. So hopefully we can get to that emotional pitch, get those plays off, and crucially, even in that heat, keep our discipline. Because actually Ireland at their best are one of the more disciplined sides in world rugby. At their worst, they do leak a few penalties, and when it starts to lose their momentum, they can do. But if they stay on top of the All Blacks will give away penalties if you go through 10 plus phases against them. They don't really like defending all that much. They much rather get their hands on the ball. So if you successfully carry a few times and go through the multi-phase, the likely thing is that they'll infringe, and you can use that then to play your way into the game. That's definitely Ireland's picture. They need to control things and do that. One thing that I see is actually Nigel Owens, who I love as a ref. I think that favours New Zealand slightly just stylistically. I think the way he officiates scrums is less likely to reward dominance in that area. So if Ireland get an edge there, it's unlikely he'll be blowing for penalties. And he also tends to favour free-flowing, fast rugby, which is definitely more All Blacks than Ireland. So
I think of the game like Ireland have beaten the All Blacks twice in this cycle. And you have to think of the circumstances of those games and how it actually happened. When they beat them last year, the All Blacks were it almost felt a little bit like they were walking wounded, even though they had their full men. Their attack was blunt, frankly. I mean, they had the ball for the last play, and they didn't look like scoring. Now, you can attribute that to Ireland getting on top of them, but I think no matter how much Ireland get on top of them, if the All Blacks have a bit more time and space, they're going to be a lot more lethal than they were 12 months ago. So I actually think the better model is when Ireland beat them in Chicago. And that was just an example of just playing total rugby. I mean, they had their offensive systems. They had their little plays that they felt were going to cause the All Blacks problems. A lot was going off Sexton. But they just played a really accurate game of good attacking rugby. And they scored 5 tries to the All Blacks 4. When the All Blacks drifted off the breakdown, Conor Murray went. They were playing heads-up, aggressive footy. And when they do that, when they're at their best, they do look irresistible. But I'm hoping that this team is as good as that team, because there have been some personnel changes since then. I mean, Jamie Heaslip was at number 8, and you would hope that the Ireland team still has that kind of performance in them, because I think more than last year's grinded out against a tired and blunt New Zealand, this is going to be a real shootout. Yeah, the All Blacks look good with the ball.
This is everything. I mean, some of the questions some people in Bash Rugby and that and put up here is, I think the biggest thing here is, as Ultimate Shooter actually puts up, Sexton. Is he going to be sitting on the? Is this time at least he's not sitting on the sideline. When he plays, Ireland is a different team for sure. It's been seen time and time again in this tournament and before this tournament. He's definitely a talisman for this team, and I think that's going to be a massive difference. As you could see that game against Scotland, if they performed that way, that was a clinical execution team that was just unbelievable to watch. And the other side, also, what Unbiased Rugby brings up is Brodie Retallick. How much of an impact is he going to have in this game, considering he hasn't had much game time? I really think they were going to blood him against France. How is that going to affect his game, and is he going to be a problem for the Irish?
It's tough to say without knowing, without seeing the guy in training. And even then it's tough to say because you don't know how a guy's going to cope at test level. I mean, Brodie Retallick is as experienced as they come, and experienced guys do tend to slot back in. If he hits his best form, he deserves to be there. He's just an incredible player who can get on top of anybody. But I will flag that there is a concern when you hide a guy for that long, and he's obviously just coming back for injury. Like, I actually think David Pocock coming back into the Wallabies team has not looked his old self. He probably is a bit rusty, and he's not quite the jackling threat that he is at his best. He's actually being outplayed by Michael Hooper, which, when he was a regular in the Wallabies squad, he was the best back rower in it by some stretch. And I think there's a little lesson in that, is that you can't just hide a guy and roll them out for the big game. So it's possible that you get a little bit of a cold Brodie Retallick, and certainly he's not going to have much time to get up to the physicality of the game, because you'd like to think Ireland are going to come hungry and they're going to hit him hard from minute one.
Yeah.
So he's got to be up for the fight, but if he is, he's an incredible player and will be worth his place there. He's a wily line-out operator, deceptively good carrier, passer for football, one of the most skilled locks and most physical locks out there.
That's definitely one of the biggest impacts I can see him having, is that line-out issue you highlight, because of all our set pieces, and it's the first time really in years that Ireland have been come to the World Cup with a line-out that they're not entirely sure about. Like, they're not certainly not leaning on it as the pivotal attack point that it has been in most Ireland teams over the last decade. So having Brodie in there as an option and having just at 2 all day just puts a lot of doubt into the minds of people like Rory Best and James Ryan, who's an excellent player but a young man still. So there's definitely value in having him in there as a massive obstacle. I definitely see Brodie slotting back in there and being impactful for sure. I'm hopeful that our guys can get a few plays off on him, though. Absolutely rough him up early and welcome him back to the test arena very physically.
Last thing because we are running out of time. Last thing I want to just cover is who's replacing Aki in that position. Who do you think it's going to be? Will it be Henshaw, or who do you think it will be?
I think almost certainly Henshaw. Neither Farrell nor Ringrose have the experience at 12. What's curious to see is whether they go for Henshaw or Ringrose, because
Farrell or Ringrose.
Farrell or Ringrose at 13. Farrell has been unreal. He's a big man. He's got great hands. He's also a phenomenal defender. I think if you picked Henshaw at 12 and Farrell at 13, that is our most defensively dominant midfield selection. Yeah. But Gary Ringrose does have a good X factor to him. He also has probably a crisper wide passing game than Farrell.
He's probably the only centre that we have in that 13 channel who truly challenges the outside shoulder of his defenders a lot more. Like either Farrell or sometimes Henshaw when he plays at 13. They both tend to attack a little narrower. They come in and play a lot off 9, running crash balls, just a different mold of centre. So it does, whoever they pick there will kind of illustrate how they want to play this game and where, because there are really good arguments for either. But I think the one that is sure is that Henshaw is going to be at 12, and he's going to be leading the defensive line from 12, because he's at his best. He is very, very devastating kind of reader of the play, and he shuts down the outside space and passing lanes very, very expertly. He's kind of similar enough actually to how Nathaniel Am plays on the other side of the ball for the Springboks. Really closes that distance and shuts that door quickly and definitely, like with dominant tackles. That he wraps the ball, makes sure you get to deck, no fuss, no messing about it, no hint of an offload, stick your tackle. So that's Henshaw will be in to try and be tasked with doing that job. Now, it's easier said than done, because the All Blacks will be trying to get it around him and use that Barrett Moanga access to shift the point of contact and make him less impactful. Because in those games that we've beaten the All Blacks, Henshaw has been a pivotal defensive force in shutting them down. Yeah. And they will remember him. Like the All Blacks won't enjoy playing him that much, but we'll try and shift it around him. So it's an interesting game.
I definitely, personally, I would go for Henshaw 12, Farrell at 13. I suspect Joe will go for Henshaw 12 and Ringrose at 13. Either could work. It remains to be seen.
We'll definitely see. Okay, next up game. We've got the Wales-France game. This is an interesting one. Obviously, I'm sure that this the Welsh have definitely been bringing up the 2011 loss to France in the semis here, and how that's actually bringing, obviously, Stephen Jones actually being part of the team that lost that game. That's now their backline coach. How is that affecting it? What do you think which team? I know that Wales have looked strong in this, but what can France bring to take on the Welsh?
Well, they can definitely bring something. I mean, France crucially were the only side who actually threatened the Welsh defence in the Six Nations. The Welsh defence was all over just about every Six Nations team except for France, and France isolated the real weakness that is in the Welsh defence that actually Australia exposed at times in that game as well, which is just in that outside shoulder of the 13 channel. If you can get a couple of men in around Jonathan Davis, his decision-making tends not to be great. And certainly he's easier shutting down stuff on his inside than stuff hits him on the outside. Then he can lose his feet and actually be kind of made a fool of. Yeah, that's what France will look to do. And they actually got a couple of tries from doing just that in the Six Nations. They literally flooded those wide channels with 4 or 5 players, backed themselves to execute and offload, played that very high-tempo game, and it just doesn't suit the Welsh defence. The Welsh defence is based mostly on narrow but very quick line speed. And then in the breakdown, they are spoilers. They get their hands on the ball. They slow everything up. They try and turn it over. They make an absolute mess of it. What France need to do is up the pace, flood those wide channels with their offensive players, and then avoid contacts, almost like Japan do. Keep the offloading game going. Move the ball around. Don't let the Welsh defence set ever. Yeah. Never let them get back so they can get their blitz going. And then you will see a more gettable, attable Welsh defence.
And they definitely have the weapons in players like Pinot, with guys like Dupont pulling the strings at 9. Medar has been excellent in that exact capacity, being a link man in those wide channels, in pods of 4 or 5 backs and forwards sweeping to one direction. They do that very well, probably better than most tier 1 sides, in fact, where they see a bit of space and they'll flood the short side very quickly and back themselves to tip it on. Even if the passes are only 1 meter at a time, they execute them very, very well and can find space that way. That being said, I think, and the weight of history also is on the French side more than the Welsh in terms of World Cup pedigree, where France have made finals before and they know how to do a time, a momentum swing and a run to the final. They can definitely do that. Wales, I think, have been really impressive so far in the tournament. Yeah. They've been had it put up to them. The Fiji performance was excellent against them. The Aussies came and pushed them as well. They've had to answer some questions, and thus far they've had the answers. Whereas France have shown kind of hints, and even with that Tonga performance, they've shown shades of the flakiness that will probably lead to them coming unstuck at some point. It's hard to see this France side going all the way, despite some of their wonderful players that they do have. But Wales are seemingly a very well-oiled machine and have real confidence in that when games get tight in that last quarter, they just have a sense of a team that know what to do. Yeah. Certainly when you're talking about Alan Wynne-Jones or Ken Owens or Tipperick, these are experienced heads, and they'll see them through, I think.
Yeah, I one of the things that we've maintained about this Wales team, which I think is true, it comes from the 10-year tenure of 10-year tenure. It comes from the 10 years that Warren Gatland has been in charge, is that they're just really, really settled, and they're actually quite versatile as a team. They can play in a lot of different ways, and we saw against Fiji how they can shift it wide and attack a weak replacement with Jonathan Davis. They can play explosive attacking footy. They can play sort of very clever fundamental scoring footy, like those 2 drop goal sets against the Wallabies. But I actually think the best way to beat this French team, not to toot our own horn too much, is actually how Ireland play. Ireland don't really struggle with the French. They have a pretty good record against them. This year in particular, even in a ropey Six Nations, Ireland's way of playing, just a really conservative forward pods off 9, not much offloading, not much of kicking the ball away when you're in the opposition half, but just holding the ball and running at them. It tires them. It weakens them. The French hate not having the ball. They're not great defenders. Their back row is good and rangy and can attack well, but they don't have true poachers in there. So if Wales resource the breakdown and play a slow, bludgeoning, forward pods, well-resourced breakdown, they will wear the French down. I think that's how you beat France. I would like to see Wales do that. They
executed a game plan like that against England in the decider for the Six Nations to great effect and to great surprise as well. They didn't expect, certainly the English didn't expect them to target them there. But as we've said about this Wales side, they are super versatile. They can take games many places, and that is a wise course against the French. You want to just hold the ball, force them to defend, and they will. There's a fair bit of quitting them, the French team, when it's not going their way and they haven't seen the ball in a while. They'll probably concede a try,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that they're probably the least some impressive attacks, but they have had a hard time putting points on the board, this French side. So I think that's going to be essential. If you can just annoy them enough in the last few minutes, I don't think the French will be able to come back. I do think that I've got a hard time seeing France take it here. When they arrive, they're amazing. They've got some, as you said, world-class backline players, and I think you're right. It's a case of keep the ball out of their hand, annoy them for the first 40, and I think you'll be fine. Do not give them a chance in that first 40 like the Argentinians did, because I think their second half is not as potent as it can be. Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely
agreed.
true.
I think Wales for this one.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Awesome. Okay, so let's get to the last game. We've got the, for me, an important one.
Of course.
And obviously, this is the big one. Is South Africa going to be a new enemy of the World Cup? Or is there going to be another movie made about the Brighton miracle? This is what a lot of South African people are saying here. Is there a sequel about to happen? Considering that Scottish game, I am a little bit more tentative than I was originally. I was like, I'm okay with playing Japan. I think we'll do better. But then I saw them play Scotland, and that was scary. I would have almost liked them not to play this last week.
Yeah. I tell you what, as well, you made a slight mistake there in your graphic, because it's not actually South Africa v Japan. It's Japan v South Africa. Japan topped their pool.
Yeah, that's true. So we did the same with the Ireland one at first. That's how I noticed that. It was like Ireland v New Zealand. No, wait, that's not right. It's New Zealand. But yeah, no, Japan have been so impressive, and like the way they play is so exciting. I really love their style. I love how just the tempo they bring to the game, but also some of their operators. They've shored up their set piece since that Brighton miracle. In fact, their scrum and line out and defense has all improved immeasurably. And I think one of the pivotal matchups in this game is Lutanya Am versus Lafayette on one side and one in the 13 channel, because like South Africa so far have been so good at shutting down anything inside that with that narrow blitz, that kind of outside to in blitz with the wingers getting involved too. Can be very tough to get around that. But Japan, through Lafayette, have been great at getting their hands free in that 13 channel and accessing the wide point. And if they do get outside that Springbok blitz, I see it they'll score a try. I see no other outcome other than either Fukuoka or Matsushima going the whole way, because there is actually room out there the way the Springboks are defending. So that's going to be a really pivotal test, is like, will Lafayette get his hands free, or will Am be devastating as he's been and just put him to death?
It's part of a bigger picture. I mean, when Japan played South Africa pre-World Cup and South Africa smashed them, the real difference maker, how Japan had been attacking in the PNC, is basically avoiding rucks as best they can. They were just trying to get the hands free, even just popping it back to the scrum half and going again, maintaining both the high tempo and just giving them space to operate in. But when what the Springboks did to them in the terms of how they won the contacts is they tackled pretty high, like around the midriff and up, trapped the ball, drove them back a little bit, destroyed all their momentum, didn't let them get the hands free, and that's essentially stifled their attack. And they only got 7 points in the game, and that doesn't happen to them too often.
Yeah.
So that's the key, is what happens, I think, when Japan have the ball, how the Boks can stifle that attack. And I think we can back the Boks to score some tries when they have the ball, because they're so physical and explosive.
Yeah.
I don't know if the Japanese will cope.
No, I don't. And I also, like, compared to the job they did on Ireland, where Ireland are actually a comparable outfit to the Springboks in many ways. Play a forward, or certainly if you're coming at it from a Japanese point of view, tactically you're expecting big carriers off 9, a big potent set piece, both at scrum and line out maul time. All of that, those are work-ons to try and stifle them and try and play yourself into the game. They did have like a really good bit of nous to give them the edge at scrum time that I don't know if they'll be able to replicate, just because it was kind of caught everyone off guard, including the Irish, when they talked about Cian Healy all day, and then shit took one step to the left on the setup of every scrum so they could overload Tyke Furlong. An absolute masterclass, but I don't expect they'd have the same kind of deceptive tactic to roll out against what is a very potent Springbok scrum as well. So and couple that with the fact that the Boks do scrum for penalties and scrum aggressively. I struggle to see Japan holding that, certainly for the whole game. They may be able to get some parity in the first half, but I think in the second half you'll start to see, when those subs come in, the Boks start to get a bit of momentum at scrum time.
Yeah, and that's why I think ultimately, sorry to cut you off, but that's why I think ultimately that the Boks are the better team, and that it'll show as the game goes on. Mm-hmm. So the only real avenue for Japanese success is to get early tries, and that's why it matters so much what the Bok defense does against what is one of the best attacks out there.
Yeah, For sure.
They have been quite impressive. One thing that's concerns me about Japan, and I think if I was a Japan fan, I'd be concerned about, is the fact that effectively most of their star players have played the entire tournament, almost 80 minutes every game. At some point that's got to run out? South Africa's only really had their starting line play 2 games of the 4. We've effectively swapped our entire team in both other games, showcasing the depth of the team and how much we can bring in subs. On the other hand, can Japan play another 80 like they did? I mean, you could already see the legs start to get a little bit tired in that Scottish game. The last 20 minutes were definitely, there wasn't as much X factor. And I know Hart can bring a lot, but can it bring enough for another 80 minutes?
Good point. It's definitely a good point. It's definitely a good point. What they do have going for them is that they sort of finagled the schedule to give themselves the best amount of rest days. I mean, they did not have a short turnaround for any one of their games. It was like 7 days, 8 days, 7 days, 8 days. And they have another decent one going into this game. Not to mention the fact that they are, acclimatized to the conditions, naturally, them being, from Japan. And not what's more, Jamie Joseph has had these guys in the back room of the Sunwolves, not playing games, just training with them for the best part of a year, presumably prepping them conditions-wise and otherwise for the whole tournament. But it's definitely a concern, especially when you consider that from their point of view, they're in bonus city. They've got their job done. They've made the knockouts. Anything more is a bonus. So all of that is stacked against them, and you might see them wilt, especially if things go wrong in the first half. Yeah, you might see them wilt.
There's potential for this to be the biggest winning margin as well of all the quarters yet, with that in mind.
Apart from Ireland's victory over the All Blacks.
Obviously, when Ireland 60 points in the All Blacks, that'll obviously be
to them.
Wait, say it again.
Similar to what Italy was going to do to them last weekend.
Yeah, exactly. We'll never get to see that Parise hat-trick that was naturally coming, But so I'm kind of worried for Japan that maybe, like, that is a very good point, and it's kind of illustrative of it's a bit offensive to be calling them a tier 2 side at this juncture when they've already seen Scotland off and they're through the thing. But one factor is, like you're saying, the depth isn't quite there to be able to confidently rotate your squad and still get results, where the Springboks, we were touting them as one of the best, strongest squads coming to the World Cup.
I think the strongest.
You're probably the strongest in terms of, like, you could pick any combination of them and you're not going to result in anything other than an excellent team. Whereas that's definitely not true for the Japanese. So it just depends on how well they go on the day. And the first 20 minutes will be very, very interesting and revealing. If the Japanese can set that tempo at all, then it's game on. But if you start to see a bit more of a slow contest, a few Pollard bombs here and there, because actually one area Japan have been untested, even though they've kind of demonstrated some weaknesses under the high ball. So I'd expect South Africa to try and slow the game up a little, make it physical, kick the ball in the air, challenge them there, and try and turn it into an arm wrestle that they will inevitably win if the game goes that way.
Yeah.
No, awesome. Okay, great, guys. I think we're going to end it there. We've really gone over. I was sorry to keep you guys that long, but I appreciate your things. Any final remarks do we want to finish off here with, or any kind of final things you want to cover?
No, just thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun. It's definitely going to be an exciting weekend of footy. And if you want to catch us on our YouTube channel, we're up there at Overlap Rugby, as you can see on the screen. You can find us on YouTube there, or follow us on Twitter under the same name.
For sure. And in the interest of this, let's have Ireland and the Springboks triumph, and we'll see you in the final.
Yeah.
That sounds like a great time. I definitely love that. And I hope to either join you guys on your channel, you guys come on mine next week so we can talk about some of the stuff again. But I appreciate you guys. And please, guys, if anybody hasn't followed them already, please go join Overlap Rugby. They're a great channel, a lot of fun. Both of them have a lot of banter, especially their live games. Are you guys doing any live streams of the quarterfinals this weekend?
Yeah, we're hoping to do at least one. Yeah, it remains to be seen which one. Probably at this point, England, Australia might suit us best.
Yeah,
we are hesitant to do the Ireland game,
which we did last. It's just going
to be so tough. I mean, you're just going to watch 2 grown men slowly die. Why do you want to watch that?
Awesome. Okay, well, if anybody wants to, I highly recommend catching them any of their live games that they do stream. Also, it's really, really good fun to watch. And thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Cheers. Thanks
so much. See you guys. Bye.